Saeed Sadiq of the American University of Cairo says someone is clearly supporting the extremists with high-tech help.
This was a mobile Russian hospital, so to pinpoint where its location, you need technical assistance, and I don't think the rebels have the satellite or the air reconnaissance plane that can locate it, so somebody had been providing them with this information. If they think that targeting doctors, that would make the Russians end the war and bye-bye and they leave, again, they are totally wrong. They are desperate, the terrorists are desperate, where would they go after leaving Aleppo? So it's a big dilemma for the rebels and those who are sponsoring them. What to do with them after they leave Aleppo?
We asked several human rights organizations to comment on the deadly attack on the field hospital. Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch said they don't have enough information to comment. The International Committee of the Red Cross told us that medical personnel are protected under international humanitarian law and therefore cannot be attacked.
The repeated attacks on healthcare and other civilian infrastructure throughout Aleppo are further indications of how all sides to the conflict in Syria are failing in their duties to respect and protect healthcare workers, patients and hospitals, and to distinguish between them and military objectives. When hospitals come under fire, countless numbers of people are deprived of life-saving healthcare.
Now, the Russian Defense Ministry has reacted to the Red Cross statement, saying it was expecting greater support and solidarity from the organization. It also accuses the Red Cross of apathy regarding the case and of impartiality. Well, RT's Gayane Chichikan in Washington went to Monday's State Department briefing where she asked for comment on the shelling of a Russian mobile hospital in Aleppo.
From what I've seen before, the State Department is usually quick to comment on reports of medical facilities attacked in rebel-held territories. It had previously cited various sources which it called credible when talking about reports of hospitals attacked.
The United States condemns in the strongest possible terms the attack this morning.
We strongly condemn the resumption of airstrikes in Syria.
There's no excuse for targeting innocent civilians. We haven't missed an opportunity to continue to raise our outrage at the continued bombing and siege of Aleppo.
But the rebels' attack this Monday on the mobile clinic set up by Russia in Aleppo, the State Department found difficult to confirm, even though there's video footage of the attack. Do you condemn the attack?
So here's what I know about that. I've seen the reports. We've not been able to confirm. It's difficult to do, obviously, given the fighting and given our lack of access to what's happening on the ground. But to answer your question, of course we condemn any attack on a hospital or healthcare facility.
Well, the topic of Aleppo provoked some strong exchanges at Monday's emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. Members clashed over a draft resolution calling for an immediate 7-day ceasefire in the Syrian city. Russia and China used their vetoes, arguing that terrorists and their sponsors would only exploit a pause as they always do. And that prompted the following exchange between Britain's envoy and his Chinese counterpart.
China has chosen to side with Russia, a party to this conflict. Put simply, they have chosen to veto not because of a lack of consultation, but because of their long-standing, misplaced faith in a despot who has killed nearly 500,000 of his own people.
I would like to ask the representative of the UK what right he has to distort the positions of other countries. I would like the UK representative to put an end to the practice of poisoning the atmosphere of the Security Council and abusing the solemn forum of the Council. This is not the first time that he did this, and I hope that such abuse will not repeat in the future.
Russia warned its colleagues in advance that it would veto the text. Here's how the Russian envoy to the UN explained his country's position.
The plan, which Secretary Kerry and Foreign Minister Lavrov agreed on in Rome, could lead to effectively ending the Aleppo crisis, whereas the current draft resolution does not even mention the withdrawal of militants from eastern Aleppo, but only a ceasefire by all sides. Previously, such pauses only allowed militants to regroup and gather strength.
According to the Russian envoy, not only could the resolution benefit the extremists, but it could also undermine efforts made by the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and his American counterpart John Kerry. Last week, the two diplomats agreed on a settlement plan for Aleppo. It includes the withdrawal of militants from the eastern part of the city.
We've seen this many times. Secretary Kerry is working with Minister Lavrov to reach tangible results, but when they are close to an agreement, someone hinders them. This tactic is deeply regrettable, when a consensus is reached, and then we are told there was no such thing.
Russia says that they were on the cusp of reaching a deal with the United States to allow for some resolution of the situation in eastern Aleppo, and that this resolution undermines the negotiation. That is a made-up alibi. The United States, including Secretary Kerry, has continued our bilateral conversations with Russia to try and find some way to relieve the suffering around eastern Aleppo. However, we have not reached a breakthrough.
It was a stunt. It was a stunt to force the Russians and Chinese to oppose the resolution. It's just more of this bombast and propaganda we're getting from the Obama administration that is just unwilling to wake up and smell the coffee and realize that Assad is not going to be overthrown, that their policy of supporting these jihad terrorists is not producing any good results and has no future, but they don't know what else to do. They don't know how to walk away from it. I hope that at some point Mr. Lavrov and Mr. Kerry can work out a realistic path forward. But how many times in the past have they met, seemingly agreed on something, only to have the Obama administration walk away from it immediately afterward? So I'm not particularly optimistic.
The French Prime Minister Manuel Valls has officially resigned, with Interior Minister Bernard Cazeneuve stepping into his role. Valls quit so he could make a bid for the presidency next year.
Yes, I'm a candidate for the presidency of the Republic.
Manuel Valls belongs to the Socialist Party, which has become deeply unpopular. Under his premiership, France has seen demonstrations and strikes descending into violence. The country has also been hit by a number of terror attacks. These include the Paris atrocities of 2015, when 130 people were killed, the deadliest in France's recent history. And Manuel Valls sparked fury among the public when he made this comment amid the terror attacks.
Times have changed, and we should learn to live with terrorism.
Well, Manuel Valls still has to win the party ticket in the primaries in January. His potential rivals in the presidential election include former French Prime Minister François Fillon, initially an outsider candidate who went on to win the Republican candidacy, and Marine Le Pen, the leader of the National Front Party, who has been gaining popularity in recent years. Laurent Jacobelli from the Debout La France party says the upcoming election is a chance for anti-establishment parties to capitalize on the failures of mainstream politicians.
What we know for sure is that there are two possibilities for the French population. They can choose for what we call the establishment. Frankly, François Fillon or Manuel Valls would run the same policy. The other choice is what we could say the anti-establishment parties, Front National, but they are not the only one. We have to remember that Nicolas Sarkozy, the former French president, and François Hollande leave us a France in which there is no more security against terrorism. We have less policemen than before. We have a weakest army than before. And no important measure has been taken against terrorism. So we need a president strong enough to control the national borders, to control strictly migration, and to do the war to the terrorism. And establishment is unable to do that.
And the rejection of mainstream politicians also happening in Italy, where Prime Minister Matteo Renzi is to step down after losing a referendum that was supposed to make passing reforms easier. And two Eurosceptic parties, Lega Nord and the Five Star Movement, are now vying to take control. Well, for more on the implications of the Italian referendum for the Eurozone, that is, I'm now joined by economist Felix Moreno here on RT International. Good to see you today. Thanks for coming on the program. The euro, as I'm sure you saw, fell to a 20-month low against the dollar when the referendum result came in. Now, of course, it's since bounced back. But why do you think it reacted like that? Is the currency unstable?
Well, the euro is under significant threat, not only by what's happening in Italy, but also obviously by the implications of Brexit, and also, as you just mentioned, by the French elections and what could come out of that. Not only is Movimento 5 Stelle in Italy clearly and explicitly Eurosceptic, but so is Marine Le Pen. So, and if Italy and France, two of the core countries of the Eurozone, were to start working against the euro or for a direct exit of the euro, obviously the threat to this currency would be grave.
And of course, with elections coming in Germany soon, that probably could potentially be another threat to the euro as well.
Well, of course, the expected upset in the German elections would be, for example, the growth of Alternative für Deutschland, the Eurosceptic party. But even though the most optimistic polls for them don't give them more than 15 to 20%, so they could topple Merkel's government, but they wouldn't be able to change things. But in Italy, Movimento 5 Stelle is the leading party in the polls. They could win. And in France as well, Marine Le Pen is also leading in the polls. So there is a potential for an upset in Germany, but in these two countries, in France and Italy, the upset could topple the government and change the government and bring to power parties who want to exit the euro.
It's interesting as people keep commenting that the changing face of Europe, as many are saying we're witnessing today. When it comes to Italy, though, it's unclear at this point when Italy will get a new parliament. What do you think that means for Italian banks? You made a few comments a moment ago.
Yes, well, Italian banks are crashing. They need a bailout. And the rules in place since January 1st, 2016 forbid the bailing out of banks in the Eurozone if there is no bail-in of depositors and bondholders first. However, in Italy, bonds of Italian banks are spread very widely among the population, so it would provoke a huge outcry from the Italian public if bondholders were to take a hit. Many small-time savers would lose their savings if Italian banks were bailed in, and this would lessen confidence in the euro and the European Central Bank even more. So right now, Mario Monti is not thinking about what he's doing next. He's going to Draghi and begging for a bailout of Italian banks.
And is that bailout going to come to the Italian banks?
Well, the new rules in place since January 1st forbid it. There can be no bailout without a bail-in first. No public funds can be devoted to rescue of a bank if the bondholders and the depositors and all the stakeholders in the bank have first paid their part and assumed their risk. And that is completely politically untenable in Italy. So we'll see. Either the ECB will break its own rules and the European Union will show that the rules that they put in place after the last few bailouts are meaningless, or they will enforce the rules and we will see another Cyprus.
Yeah, fascinating times upon the Eurozone and European Union these days. Economist Felix Moreno, thank you. All right, now, after years of denials, Berlin finally acknowledges that the US is using an airbase on German soil to conduct drone warfare around the world. That story after the break.